And now this is the time for me to introduce to everyone our guest from Germany, Tanja Schlesinger, who is Vice President of Finance at DB Regio AG, and she's responsible for Central region in Germany. So Tanja delivered this case study at one of the Frankfurt FP&A boards, and really everyone was astonished how quickly the transformation could be achieved when you have the right people, when you have the right approach. And I think the unique features of this case study that it demonstrates that you can achieve a lot when you have this business partnering approach, when you are managing very carefully your internal resources, because something what Tanja managed to achieve in quite short period of time, it was done without any external investments, without any external consultants, and with all the resources that she had at that time in her finance department. So Tanja, you're welcome to our international webinar.
Thank you, Larissa. Let me also give you a warm welcome to our webinar. I guess it would be easier to understand what type of business I'm in when you take a look in a nutshell at DB Regio. We're a company of public mass transportation in Germany. Our business started to face competitors like 12 to 15 years ago, and that business changed quite a bit. Why has it changed? Mass transportation is done either by trains or by bus. And currently, it's public contracts that we sign, that we try to win, and we are remunerated with contractors' fees. On the train side, it's roughly 30 public contracts, public handout contracts, and on the bus side, that is manifold, that is over 400. Altogether, our group company today makes a turnover of roughly 8.8 billion euro. The EBIT is 6% more or less. And currently, where our performance is measured, that is in person kilometers. How many passengers get along on our either trains or buses. Why did I highlight in red the region Central? That is the part I'm in charge of for train transportation. And let me only give you a brief overview what Central does today. We have a contribution of 15% of the overall turnover of our group company, and our EBIT is more or less the same as of my group company. Well, when you talk about handling so many contracts, and mostly it's different lines or a set of lines that are contracted out, then the question is, how do you handle that? Larissa asked me a question when we started to talk about the webinar. And as we see that on the next slide, the FP&A is definitely a challenge, as the operations has so many challenges to see anything and forecast anything before you had it. Maybe we go for a second back to the FP&A challenges. I started 4 years ago in that company, and I definitely entered a world of manually created reports and manual analysis. It took weeks for detailed analysis and much longer, of course, for deep dives. In my staff, few business talents, and demographically, a mushroom cloud with 1/3 of people being over 50 years old and 20% of my staff already leaving within the next 3 years. So I was wondering, how do you face that? That's definitely less personnel who knows intuitively where to derive data, how to put reports together. And of course, less people who can manually still create reports and analysis. Then the other part of our challenge came with the competition. We had many contracts, and they Each one of them awaited, of course, a solid profit management. Now, think back of manually created reports, manual analysis, and probably when you look today at more or less 30 contracts, you probably know what I'm talking about, but that is quite a challenge. The next point also for challenges brings me up to the question of, what is your data model behind? And at the end, the data model that lies on a very grown legacy IT. So the 4 challenges: time, it has cost-consuming processes, then my people dependence on the process with a high risk of errors, little transparency in the light of legacy systems, and the 4th being a very high level of inefficiency. For the FP&A, we started out, and that brings me to the next slide, to better understand our key value drivers. The set looks quite intense, but at the end, it's the 6 major points, starting from market competition, our customer with the quality, turnover, resources, of course, investment, and a few financial KPIs. And our step and solution to meet the challenges I pointed out earlier was this first step, that the KPI set was established to measure performance. And the KPIs did not only get derived from profit and loss positions, many of them reflect the quality of operational issues. They show a significant influence on the KPIs that at the end have a lasting effect on our profit. And the KPIs tackle all issues of the company, from market and competitive situation, customers, contractors, passengers, and of course, turnover resources, and as well the investment. So the first step with the KPI set was done. In the second step, we asked for the key drivers of those KPIs, and those were specified on a more detailed basis. In the third step and the last step, we wanted to get to know our key drivers, which had the most influence in profit. Marissa pointed out the 20/80 ratio, and of course, I can only agree. Why was that task of finding the key value drivers now so crucial to us? When we look at the next slide, you find that currently my region acts together with 8 public contractors. Those contractors handed out 27 contracts, and to fulfill each contract, we currently have 46 different data sources. That is quite a lot. And in the contracts, in the 27 contracts, currently, and that is our highlights that we look at every single day, are reporting duties, which at the end, if you cannot fulfill them, call for penalty charges. And there are 234 different duties. That is quite a lot. But at the end, when you see the number of the data set at the very bottom of the slide, you probably understand why any manual process will take you far from being timely, accurate, and transparent to anyone when you do those processes when you run them manually. Nevertheless, transparency is crucial for better decisions, and I can only tell you, transparency wins. You get better decisions, higher competitiveness, less intuition, you become more analytical, and a more data-driven validation helps you in your business judgment. I already highlighted with the triangle and the 54 million data sets that we had one special key driver where we highlighted that position first. You see that here with the green markup. It says, again, when we look at 20% of our key drivers that are accountable for 80% of our income contribution, that definitely was one to me. We started to look at those profit and loss positions with which we lost the most of our profit contribution, and we aimed immediately at penalty payments. From my earnings. Last year, I lost roughly 20% on penalty payments, and I knew I wanted to avoid that in the future. The penalty payments themselves are not key drivers for themselves, but their underlying effect, our operative quality, they describe the key drivers of the P&L position turnover. When we saw the 254 different quality parameters, a total database of 54 million needs to be looked at daily, needs to be looked at to derive predictions and prevent all the wrong decisions. Interestingly, the decision will not be taken by any management, but by the operative staff, like our crew planners, the dispatchers, or our workshop planning for maintenance and repair. This is why in the tools in the context of business intelligence commonly used by business units and the FP&A, they became so crucial. I come back to challenges. On the next slide, you see the data-driven transformation triangle for better insights. I just dropped the name of BI before, business intelligence. To me, BI is more than ready-to-use reports. To me, BI ensures one single source of truth. To me, BI enables all levels of employees, from top management to operative staff, to share the same information. To me, BI visualizes information that otherwise gets lost in the sea of big data. And to me, as a very last point to this, BI is the basis for a prompt, location independent, user device unlimited access to the very essential information for planning, analytics, and better decisions.
Thank you very much, Tanja. I'm going to go ahead and launch our second polling question, just asking you to share with us the technology that you're currently leveraging at your company.
Well, the picture reminds me of a lot of talks, a lot of exchange I found on the issue of BI tools. And I must admit, Excel, the Microsoft version, is not always the wrong decision. It always depends on the mass, the load of data you're using. And also to use both is, of course, the right answer, because mostly BI tools give you a sharp look, a quick look at what you need to work on. But at the end, usually to finalize data analysis, Excel does help you still. Marisa, what do you think of the picture?
No surprises here. Excel continues to be the most popular tool in FP&A world and in finance world generally. And the reason for this, because it gives us a lot of flexibility. But the reality is that, yes, it's very risky, and definitely it's not going to give us the same level of analytics that we can get from the solution. So Tanja, my understanding that now you're almost ready to demonstrate the solution that you developed internally in your company, and even demonstrate some of the amazing capabilities of this solution. So you're welcome.
But before then, I give you a quick look of what our data landscape looked like 1.5 years ago. There's little to add to this picture, but when you look at it on the very left side, on the input side, we have those 46 different data systems where you find original operative data. In the middle, the competing islands of information. They are missing, of course, an integration to make information accessible to everybody. And we had a long war of which report told you more truly the truth than the other. And it was a waste of time. And usually before any BI gets implemented, this situation can be seen in most companies. There is no easy access to the operative systems, and the data gathering is very time consuming and also likely for retrieval errors. And of course, whatever you put peanuts in, you get peanuts only out. Whatever the working on data in the middle, makes it so handicapped, your output is probably suffering from that. So that way, we changed the situation. And we were, of course, aiming for a single point of truth that you see on the next slide. That single point of truth can, of course, only be achieved with one or the other software with business intelligence. And at the end, it should aim at solving this problem. Of course, there are many consultants out with their own applications, or you train a technical talent in-house, what makes the business tick. The one way, if you work with consultants, you're very dependent on their software, on their consultancy hours, and probably you find yourself at the end of your process with extra sick cost. We chose the other way. We, of course, had an in-house capacity, and that only works when the techies that you have at hand get to know how the business ticks. And it's easier when it's people from the inside because they already might know the company a bit better than anyone who comes as a consultant just flying in for a limited period of time. Then you need data scientists. You hook them up with your business talents, and the business talents usually needs to be eager to be trained in what technology and techies can help them to achieve. So what we did, we worked on a BI software that has a self-service analysis function. We tried to come from a very generic view and then let people drill down to the level they want to know. And since the data behind, not only to the penalty charges, but to our whole company data sets is so large, it's an ocean. We came up with a solution of little cost. We had an internal techie guy who was eager to access all the data, bring it together, have the hygienic part first, and then put on the algorithms together with our business units. And before I talk too much about it, I'll let you see that. Okay. I talked about a lot of contracts, and we started out with an overview of the contracts for our contract managers, which are more or less product managers. Those people have, for each contract that can be clicked from the one to the other, and be chosen, and you change immediately. So that's pretty fast, with knowing that there's tons of data behind. We talked about what they need as information at first sight. And we knew it's earnings, it's our EBIT, it's punctuality. I'm sorry, I didn't translate it. It's all still in German, but nevertheless, should give you a good insight on what we're doing. Work with donut signs, then asked to show where our biggest problem lies with our penalty payments. And you can see the ratio, how many of the penalties we pay, for example, for punctuality that is driven by construction on our trail racks, then punctuality that is probably comes from not enough personnel or sick personnel, and there's different clusters. So the cluster diagram helps out to tackle the first and biggest issues. One special other penalty is shown on the donut diagram on the very right-hand side. So that is probably from the operative view of a product manager the most important information. And at the end, he sees also his earnings on a monthly line, and if he wants to go down to details of his penalties, he can do so here. Shows now the year 2018, and change to the year before if you want, and it does that. The calculus is immediately shown. So that is on our product side. When we go at a closer look at the penalties, because those were really giving us a lot of pain, we had the penalties usually shown for each contract only. Here you can go into all together or choose one of the contracts specifically. When you want to drill down and see what did January do, how can I close the one window here, as you can see. You get, for example, the years, you take the 18, you get all the details monthly. With the punctuality, as more detail. It shows you where was our aim, what did we aim at, and where are we currently in the year 2018. Now, there was a very specific problem that we had with our train conductors. Our contracts today say that our train conductors need to be allocated with different ratios along the contract, what it tells you to fulfill. And we have specific contracts that come out with a 25 ratio that needs to be fulfilled during the day between 7 o'clock and 1900. And then 100% of each train needs to be accompanied by a train conductor. So we have those two measures, because if you do not fulfill those, then you're penalized. And as we see here in a total, that is one contract. Of course, you can say, wow, wonderful, I did get a good hit on the 25% ratio. But at the end, how did we perform to find this? The performance is pretty bad because there are too many people on the trains allocated between 7 and 1900 hours. So when you take a look at this and you go further to other contracts, where, for example, here the 25% has only been fulfilled by 19, up to a level of 19%, and you pay probably the most charges on those. That is always only our look back. The look back gives you historically a good feel what worked, what did not work. And the question is, how do you come from recognizing what your key drivers tell you in the past to how do you prevent that? How do you get in a better prediction process? And for that, we talk about applications because it's within the system, different applications. We have now one application that is used both by the FP&A and also by the operative personnel in our business unit, by the crew rostering, by the planners. So what do they do? When they work, the difficulty for our crew rostering, and they are the key drivers of the quality of fulfillment for our crew ratio that we have to bring on trains. See here, for example, a contract that has a 25% fulfillment level. When we talk about that, in that contract, throughout the months to April, or we only want to have the first couple of months, February, you get immediately a response from the system with all the data behind. It's accurate, it's there at your fingertip, you don't have to ask anyone to run reports. Everybody can use it on mobile devices, on laptops, on your internet connection, so it's ready to use from any point wherever you are. A comfortable position that we have with this is, at the end, our trains need to be accompanied equally, all the trains, not only the couple first 10 or so, with 25% of personnel. And you can see at the very end, there's all the trains are behind, the less we fulfill this ratio. So in our contracts, when our contractor hands out the paper, they expect that there is an equal distribution of that ratio. And unfortunately, when you see that in the past you were not able to meet that, penalty charge is immediately on your desk. So this, what we see now in an analysis for the historic data, the same is used by our operative personnel in the business unit, by the crew rostering personnel, and they can simulate with their expected planning what the ratio will be. If they hit the average on every train, they can simulate if their crew rostering, when they adapted to a better level, if that second try brought them closer to avoid penalty payments. And this happened to make us so happy that, let me go back to the penalties, that we were able to reduce those in the year 2018 a lot over the months. So that is hidden. Get here. Months.
Tanja, I'm wondering how long did it take you to implement this solution internally with your limited
resources? Very good question. We had it off with one application with the penalty payments on punctuality, and expected with one person on the programming side, and more or less a day every week. One of our business units accompanied that programmer. Took us 3 months only, and we had all the penalty payments on punctuality ready to use, available as information to everybody. And to me, a system development of your IT system that can be ready to use in 3 months is just an incredibly short period of time. And I was wondering if anyone had a very similar experience, but our luxury was that we were not depending on external consultants. We had a BI system, a software that we use that was covering, so we kicked out a couple of other software that we had, and with the kick out of the other software, we were able to more than fill up our needs from what we needed to fund our new system, the new BI system. So it's one person, 3 months, and it's ready to be used. Sounds fantastic.
Great example. It's a great example how you can utilize your internal resources. In the last 2 weeks, we opened 3 additional FP&A boards in America, on the Western Coast, and also in Chicago. And the main concerns that people had regarding analytical transformation and FP&A, the first one is funding. It's always difficult to find the proper funding for such a comprehensive project. And the second one, people. So people already so busy in FP&A. So how to find this additional time for this additional project? And this is my second question, Tanja. So obviously you did this inside of your team. Your people worked obviously very, very hard. But how did you manage to combine this with other deadlines and with other activities that you already have in your department?
That's a very good question. That was an additional deadline set by me. Well, it's sometimes hard to talk about weekend work. We could avoid that, but we had probably added for 2 people in my FP&A department 2 hours over a period of 3 weeks. 2 hours every day, and that was manageable. I think when you get started, the one thing that you tackle, the funding is created by kicking out legacies, parts of legacies that you have. The funding is, so to say, an easy run. On the people side, we definitely have to bring the techie person together to understand how the business ticks and to train our business talents or FP&A personnel in what technology and the techies can help them to achieve. There is literally no understanding of the two worlds, and it's bringing them together. So the easiest, and for us, it was very important to find an issue that probably can be run in a few weeks with a large leverage. And as soon as you find those P&L positions or operative questions that you need to find a solution for, the faster you'll be inspired to take one topic, the next one, and people will come up with new ideas. And after half a year, we had a very long list of topics that people wanted to have programmed because they were inspired and saw in real time and real life what the facilitator with BPI could help them to achieve. So the transparency was there, the speed was there, the funding was no question. And to take on the side, out of your line function, people 2 or 3 is probably not a big investment at all. And as long as you find your first very good showcase, people will come automatically, and the inspiration helps with that.
Oh, this is a very interesting and very inspiring case study, Tanja. Thank you so much for presenting.